Skyrim and I are ex-lovers of a sort. You see, I met Skyrim in high school, and I'd never been with an open-world RPG before, and naturally I was head over heels. She was just so expansive and full of life. Every time it felt like I'd seen everything, she had something new to reveal. And though we didn't stay together for all of high school, you never forget your first love. Sometime in college, I went back to visit Skyrim and realized she was not good for me. You see, I wasn't a virgin anymore. I'd been with other RPGs, and with this newfound perspective, she was much more shallow than I remembered. She had broad interests, sure, but she hardly developed any of them. She was really into writing, but she leaned way too hard on tropes, and she was really into making puzzles, but they were just kind of slop meant to waste your time. And don't even get me started on all the constant fighting and shouting. After that visit, I didn't see Skyrim again for the better part of a decade. That is, until one night where my friends and I were feeling experimental. We decided it would be all three of us and Skyrim. Now, I wasn't expecting anything more than a night of novelty that in the morning we'd all wake up and say, that happened. But what I wasn't expecting is that sitting there with my gender nondescript boys crawling all over Skyrim was that I would fall in love with her all over again.
Yes, I like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. I'm not much into health food. I am into champagne. I've got to meet you by tomorrow noon and cut through all this red tape at a bar called O'Malley's where we'll plan our escape.
So, to explain how I think Skyrim together fixes Skyrim, I should really qualify what it is that's broken. And at the risk of sounding a little Marxist, I think the class system is at the core of what's wrong. And I'm not talking Nazim in the Cloud District. I'm talking about your warriors, your wizards, your rangers. The way Skyrim tries to give you a varied sandbox of tools to accomplish your goals. To be clear, Skyrim doesn't have a formal hard class system that you need to pick from at the beginning of a playthrough. Every character is free to get as good as they want at any skill. But unfortunately, Skyrim features a level scaling system, so no matter how hard I grind skills, Skyrim will just think of new suffixes to justify why the Draugrs still take roughly the same amount of hits to kill, despite me doing 5 times the damage. Oh, these aren't Draugrs. This is a Restless Draugr. Oh no, sorry, that's a Draugr White. Draugr Scourge? No. Draugr Deathlord. Oh no, dude, here comes the Draugr Mojo Dojo Casa House. And this scaling means that if you're a jack of all trade, master of none, you might find the baddies becoming increasingly spongy. So the game definitely rewards you for picking a lane, and a lot of them suck. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the level scaling, this system has some pretty cool aspects. It encourages players to experiment. The game features a stone system where you pick one thing to get better at faster, and you can change that at any time. It makes your character feel more like they're growing organically based on the things that you do, not just what you arbitrarily put points into at level ups. And really, I wouldn't be making this video if it weren't for the fact that all this experimentation has an objectively correct answer, and it's Stealth Archer. There's a running joke amongst Skyrim players that every playthrough ends with you becoming a Stealth Archer, and that's because Skyrim is secretly an FPS. Every player fights their first dragon, and the bastard won't land until you've done enough damage, and in the early game your character runs out of magicka really quickly, so you'll probably have to use a bow, and you'll learn that they're actually pretty handy. Good damage, very sustainable compared to magic or melee, and then, oh look, there's a bandit camp, just over there. What if I just snuck up on it and shot just a few arrows before I start fighting them in melee, and then they hear that juicy. And before you know it, they're skulking through dark alleys, willing to get on their knees anytime for just one more hit. Whenever you run up against a fight you're struggling with, Skyrim presents you with two options: stand and die, or run away and try to recuperate. As a mage or a warrior, this means fleeing and then drinking your favorite flavor of Gatorade until you can try to fight them again. And if they've healed while you were away, you might just fight the same losing fight again. But as a stealth archer, running away means repositioning, potentially coming at the fight from a whole new angle, and at the very least, creating more distance to continue pelting them with arrows. Running away becomes kiting. Instead of a wimp, you feel like Genghis Khan, baby, just luring foolish warriors into your kill box. And I haven't even mentioned yet that it gives you the ability to slow down time by holding your breath. Just everything about Stealth Archer feels a peak. I keep seeing people using that word and getting like a billion views, so I guess that's just what you guys want. I'll make sure to insert a few more peaks just for you. Also, to get back on track, Melee and Magic just don't feel very juicy. Neither of them have a lot of feedback. With Melee, it just kind of feels like you're scrubbing a red bar off their face with a sponge, and early game Destruction Magic feels like high-fiving them until you run out of Magicka, and then you need to either run away with your pants down chugging your Gatorade, or pull out a melee weapon and suddenly you're back to being a janitor again. Whereas with Stealth Archery, sometimes you hit somebody and it looks like you shot them with a cannon. Even if you do like those classes, you're very restricted in what you can do with them, because no matter what, you will need to bring a lot of damage. If you want to be a tank who just focuses on being able to take a lot of damage, you can do that, but why? In Dungeons & Dragons, when I play as a barbarian and I go all horse crazy on the baddies, I get joy in knowing that I'm drawing aggro that could have gone onto my sweet, beautiful baby wizard. You're taking that damage for a reason. In Skyrim, when you play a tank, you're just eating extra damage so you can buy Fandel time to shoot another arrow in my back. The same goes if you want to play a healer. Like, you can just waddle behind Lydia and hope she kills everything before you run out of blue Gatorade, but nobody does. So the game gives you the tools to play like a support, but you're always going to be fighting like a bit of an uphill battle trying to get satisfying support gameplay out of a single-player game. Oh, if only there was some way you could play Skyrim, but like with your friends. Together, mayhaps. The Skyrim Together mod lets you play Skyrim with your friends. There's no hard cap, but they recommend that you stick to 8 or less. My party fluctuated between 2 and 4 based on the availability of my boys. And I just want to say, Skyrim as a cooperative experience, it just works. Adding in human teammates opens up a lot of different play styles, and it shifts the balance into a really interesting space. Suddenly, being a support-focused healer or a tank is completely valid. As a tank, the ability to soak up damage and tension while disrupting the baddies with shield bashing and disruptive enchantments, it feels amazing because it frees up your buddies to unleash hell. And as a healer, instead of healing a Skyrim follower who gets stuck on small ledges, you're healing your friend, who will thank you for it. And it will make you feel good. Rewarded, even. And beyond opening up new playstyles, the act of putting extra players in changes the balancing. For our playthrough, we boosted the difficulty to master, and it meant that individual players were not very well equipped to solo the encounters. The baddies did enough damage that our squishies really did need a front line, and the common bandit horde was tanky enough so that our tanky player, i.e. me, was not able to clear them alone. This forces you to play to your team, and it feels great. The added difficulty means that you're much more likely to lean on consumables, something that, past a certain level, I almost never bothered with in Skyrim. I was worried the story might be worse, and honestly, yeah. The written story is pretty hard to digest with your friends hopping around in the background. Many villainous monologues interrupted by fireballs or arrows. But frankly, that's not really Skyrim's strong suit anyway. Bethesda has always excelled at environmental storytelling, and in my experience, adding friends just adds more eyeballs so that we were catching and appreciating more of the environmental storytelling. I've heard it said before that Skyrim is honestly a bit like an MMO, and it's a pretty natural comparison. MMOs tend to be very wide and very shallow in a similar manner to Skyrim, though obviously MMOs are focused on collaborative gameplay. So Skyrim Together honestly just feels like an MMO. It has all the collaborative fun, except there's a whole Skyrim on top of it. It's designed to be single player offline, so there's much less emphasis on grinding, and it solves a problem that's always annoyed me with MMOs, which is that for many MMOs, the story boils down to you need to save the world because you are the special chosen one. But by their nature, you are the 600,000th and 7th chosen one. And really, I prefer it when MMOs go for more of a collectivist, we're all in this together kind of narrative. But Skyrim Together is like if an MMO shotgunned a bottle of skooma and said,
Just spoke to Dragon God. Said you 2 to 8 people really are the coolest people in the whole goddamn world. Decide who wins the Civil War. Kill the whole Dark Brotherhood. Kill everyone in town. Blot out the sun. I don't give a fuck. It's your fantasy, Provocane.
all this to say, when it's just you and your gender nondescript boys on one server, the Chosen One narrative reads a lot better. Now, a piece of feedback that I got a few times when pitching this video is that all games are more fun with friends, and that Skyrim is not, like, particularly special in that way. And, they got a point. Just because something is more fun with friends doesn't mean that something of quality is happening. I've had fun cleaning toilets before just because my friend was there helping and cracking jokes. And, it's not just my cool as hell friends. What fascinates me about Skyrim is that it feels like it was meant to be played in multiplayer. Beyond the fun of goofing off in a virtual space with people you care about, Skyrim Together presents a cohesive experience that rewards cooperation. And my question is why? Why would a single-player game take to multiplayer so naturally? And I think the answer is a term that I am going to coin. This is my special moment where I become a peak essayist. Vestigial game design. In the way that humans still have a tailbone because we evolved from ancestors with tails, and whales still have a pelvic bone because they evolved from ancestors with legs, I think that Skyrim is surprisingly well suited for multiplayer because the Elder Scrolls series takes so much inspiration from Dungeons & Dragons that it evolved from an ancestor that was inherently multiplayer. The Elder Scrolls series has been influenced a lot by dungeon crawler TTRPGs, and the class system it takes from those games was designed for multiplayer tactical combat. Squishy wizards, tanky warriors, slippery rogues. These classes were initially designed with the idea that they would exist as roles inside of an adventuring party, not just as flavor for your power fantasy. And by putting Skyrim's design back into multiplayer, it gives you the feeling that nature is healing. Did you guys know horses evolved in North America? Like, they evolved here and then they went extinct, possibly due to the introduction of humans. Probably. And the Great Plains were still, perfect for them. So when Europeans reintroduced horses, they absolutely thrived. And I think, in a way, Skyrim is those horses galloping majestically through a landscape that they didn't know they were missing until they were returned. But those horses, they're not actually wild. They're feral, domesticated, no longer perfectly suited to the wild. And in the same way that those horses still bear the genetic scars of captivity, Skyrim is no longer the same game as its ancestors. And I don't think this would be a very honest endorsement of Skyrim Together if I didn't talk about the downsides. The mod team did some serious black magic, forcing a notoriously buggy 2011 single-player game to accept multiple players, and it works shockingly well. But if you play it, expect bugs. Expect a lot of bugs. To make sure your questing goes smoothly, make sure to read the mod's best questing practices page, and be ready to use some console commands if things go south. In particular, set stage, door unlock, and player teleport will be your unofficial party members. In my party, our player who was the best at console commands was also our mage, and it happened more than once that we got trapped inside of a room, and he said, "Give me a moment while I concoct a spell to extricate us from this predicament." Also, with the way Skyrim's level scaling works, difficulty spikes can be a problem even in single player. But in multiplayer on master difficulty, we experienced every flavor of the difficulty rainbow. Sometimes punchy, sometimes trivially easy, and sometimes it was so hard we had to cheese. Just be prepared for a bumpy ride. Also, expect a fair bit of crashing. The game is not particularly stable in vanilla, and cramming 3 extra players does not make it more stable. In Triple also, there's a recurring graphical bug that we experienced that traps you in a high bloom flashback filter, and to fix that we typed this command into the console. You might want to write this down. So that leaves the question, is it worth it? Do the pros outweigh the cons? And to that, I want to give you a crisp, concise peek. Yeah, probably. The combat really is a lot more fun when your class is actually playing a role in a team, rather than just flavoring the power fantasy. People don't really play Skyrim for the story, and frankly, they don't really play it for the stability. And personally, my group had a blast cataloging all the strange ways that the game broke. I don't think Skyrim Together is necessarily for everyone, but if you've got a group of friends who really like Skyrim, it might just reignite something you forgot was there. So, what are you waiting for? Go to her. She's out there waiting for you. Just you. And 1 to 7 of your closest friends. Like and subscribe. Peek, 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 peek.